Hey everybody, Nick Espinosa, your chief security fanatic here, and it is Sunday, so we're doing breaches of the week. And as always, I'd like to thank the following people that sent me a ton of this information. It always helps me out, and that would be Barrett Peterson, Scott Newberger, Jacqueline Wolf, and Chris Fallon. Guys, thank you so much. And if you have a tip for me, please send it my way, and I'll give you a shout out here, and also on my nationally syndicated radio show as well. And with that, let's dive in, because this was an interesting week for data breaches and threat. First up, we're going to be talking about Crypto.com. They are one of the largest players in cryptocurrency, basically your virtual bank for cryptocurrency. Essentially, that trading platform formally confirmed this past Thursday that it suffered a major security breach after suspending withdrawals for more than 14 hours on Monday in an incident that has obviously annoyed some of its users because of the company's opaque way of actually handling this incident. Now, in a statement posted on their website, the company said that attackers gained access to the accounts of 483 users on Monday, from where the intruder stole around $34 million US, which was 4,836.26 Ethereum and 443.93 Bitcoin Cash. Now, while the company did not go into the technical details of how this was possible, Crypto.com assumed all responsibility for the attack and restored the stolen funds to the affected accounts, meaning they became your insurance in that moment, which is unusual because a lot of these exchanges, when your money's ripped off, it's gone. There's no such thing as FDIC insurance in the cryptocurrency world as we speak. So Crypto.com taking it upon themselves, obviously a reputation damaging move. It was also the right thing to do. Now, since then, Crypto.com has also said that it's been working to shift into a new two-factor authentication structure and move that into a new system. So it seems like possibly that is what got compromised to allow attackers into accounts. As a result of this unexpected migration, all Crypto.com users were asked this past Monday and throughout the week to relog on and reset up their 2FA options. And so there you go. If you're a Crypto.com user and you don't check it, you might want to check in ASAP. Moving on. Let's talk about Open Subtitles. Apparently, this is a website that provides free subtitles for movie fans. I didn't even know they existed until they showed up on my radar. Now, they disclosed on January 19 that essentially they were attacked last year and subsequently paid a ransom to silence the attacker about this attack. Now, Open Subtitles said that the data of 6,783,158 users who registered on its site was stolen in this incident. Exposed information included emails, usernames, and passwords that were hashed using MD5, which is an incredibly weak hash and very easy to attack and expose passwords if you are hashing an MD5. And to quote essentially the website, the site was created in 2006 with little knowledge of security, so passwords were stored in MD5 hashes without salt. So basically they're saying, hey, we created this forever ago, we didn't think about it, security's not on the forefront, and quite frankly, yeah, we see this all the time in cybersecurity where developers, hey, get it working, and hey, it's working, it's fine, no harm, no foul, and then we come in and kind of pee in the pool. So there you go. But if you are an OpenSubtitles.com user, one of the 6.7 million, almost 6.8 million, you definitely want to check in. Moving on. Let's talk about VPN Lab out of Europe, because an international law enforcement operation has seized the servers of VPNLab.net, a virtual private network provider that was advertising its services on criminal underground forums and catering to cybercrime groups, including ransomware gangs. Essentially, a VPN is what allows you to mask your connection so you look like you're coming from somewhere else. It also adds a layer of encryption to your connection, so if your traffic is intercepted through things like a man-in-the-middle attack, it's very difficult to crack and read. And so a lot of ransomware gangs are going to use this, and apparently VPN Lab was making a good chunk of money off this. They were charging about $60 US per year, and there you go. You could hide your identity and be a ransomware gang, and they wouldn't shut you down from doing all your dirty deeds. Now, Europol, the international law enforcement agency, obviously based out of Europe, said that it seized 15 servers operated by the VPN Lab team in Germany, the Netherlands, Canada, the Czech Republic, France, Hungary, Latvia, Ukraine, the United States, and also the United Kingdom. Now, no arrests were announced, but the company's services were obviously rendered inoperable, and the main website now shows a Europol seizure banner. So there you go. If you want to check one of those out, VPNLab.net is now shut down, and that is a good thing, especially if they're catering to criminals. Moving on. Let's talk about Sacramento County in the state of California, because thousands of records containing health information and hundreds more with personal identifiable information were exposed after a phishing scam involving Sacramento County employees last year essentially happened. Now, in a news release recently, county officials said that 5 employees gave out their official login information through an external website after receiving emails sent by unknown scammers on June 22nd of last year. Now, during an audit of email boxes on November 17, the county discovered that 2,096 records containing protected health information and 816 records of personally identifiable information were exposed after this phishing scam. So, if you live in Sacramento County or are employed by the county in California, you may want to check in, especially if you have business dealings with them. Moving on, let's talk about Jefferson Health, because they are notifying more than 9,000 patients whose personal information may have been exposed due to a data breach last year. Now, an unauthorized person accessed an online portal used by Jefferson staffers to submit billing information to Independence Blue Cross Blue Shield on November 18 and attempted to divert wire payments meant for Jefferson, according to the health system. On November 22nd of last year, the investigation determined that the attacker, who impersonated 2 employees, obtained a remittance sheet containing the billing information of 9,095 patients. The data includes names, dates of service, treatment codes, and costs. Social security numbers, health insurance information, and financial account information were not involved in this data breach, according to Jefferson Health. So if you use Jefferson Health for all your medical needs, definitely check in. 10,000 of you almost are affected. Moving on. Let's talk about Vantage Healthcare Network. They actually administer business operations for third party as a vendor. So in other words, this is a supply chain attack, and they were the victim of a ransomware attack in October. And so now we are starting to see organizations start to declare data breaches by virtue of being customers of Vantage Healthcare Network. And the first one to declare is the Allegheny Health Network Home Infusion. And they had to declare that nurses' notes, billing information, patient referral information, prescriptions, treatment and therapy records, medical device orders, and scheduling information were all being handled by Vantage and were exposed in this ransomware attack. So if you have anything to do with Vantage Healthcare, heads up to you. Moving on. Let's talk about the Red Cross. Yes, the Red Cross, the international aid organization. A cyber attack targeting that basically one of their contractors working for the International Committee of the Red Cross essentially has exposed confidential data on more than 515,000 quote-unquote highly vulnerable people, many of whom have been separated from their families due to things like conflict, migration, disasters. Think about the Syrian conflict, where we had almost I think it was something like over 1 million people displaced in the region. This is where the Red Cross steps in. So obviously this is very sensitive information for very vulnerable people right now. Now, the Red Cross did not name its contractor, which apparently is based in Switzerland, and it uses them to store data, and they basically didn't say what led to the security incident either, but they did say that data comes from at least 60 Red Cross and Red Crescent national societies. In a statement, the international organization pleaded with the attackers not to publicly share or leak the information given the sensitivity of the data. If these attackers, for example, are state-sponsored from a state that is looking to release that kind of data on these vulnerable people for whatever political gain, then that might fall on deaf ears. But as always, we try to appeal to the humanity of ransomware attackers, not that it usually gets us somewhere. Hopefully the Red Cross will be okay. Moving on, let's talk about NetGain. If you recall, they are a large cloud vendor that got breached a while back, and by virtue of that, organizations are now declaring data breaches, those that used NetGain, another supply chain hit. This week, it's Intera Family Clinics out of Minnesota, and roughly 200,000 of their patients have been exposed. So if you use Intera Family Clinics in Minnesota, you might want to check in. They were using NetGain, and here we go. Moving on, let's talk about Italian luxury fashion brand Moncler. They got hit with ransomware, and in a press release, the company said that after the incident occurred in late December of last year, they had received a ransom demand and they rejected it, which it goes, a quote, against its founding principles, meaning we are not going to pay the terrorists. Good for you. Now, the published batch includes some data on employees and former employees, quote, some suppliers, consultants, and business partners as well as some customers registered in its database. No payment data was taken, according to them, because they do not store that kind of data on premises, meaning they're outsourcing that to a third party. The company did not provide further details on the data stolen or whether they could be used for identity theft. But if you are a current or former employee or patron of Moncler out of Italy, you definitely want to make sure that you are checking in, as that luxury fashion brand might have just gotten you exposed. And finally, and it was a shorter week this week, and I went looking because some weeks are crazy, but finally, we have two big finalies for you. And the first thing we're going to be talking about is a new strain of malware, now formerly known as Moonbounce. This is kind of crazy, but you definitely need to know about this because this could potentially affect how you deal with ransomware when you get hit. Now, a new malware strain, basically called Moonbounce, can survive operating system reinstalls, and it was spotted last year, basically secretly hiding in a computer, according to researchers at antivirus provider Kaspersky. Now, the company discovered the Windows-based malware last spring running on a single computer. How the malicious code infected the system remains unclear, but the malware was designed to basically operate on the computer's UEFI firmware, which helps boot the system up. The malware, as I mentioned, called Moonbounce, is essentially and really scary because it installs itself essentially into your motherboard's what is called the SPI flash memory. So instead of going onto your standard computer's hard drive and storage, it's going into flash memory. So the malware can persist even if you reinstall the computer's operating system or even swap your hard drive out physically because it's not being stored there. Traditional antivirus basically infects Windows. It sits on the hard drive. You blow the computer away and reinstall, and the infection is completely gone because you've basically installed from scratch. This, you can wipe the computer out a million times, and because it's sitting in the hardware of the computer, actually persists and will continuously reinfect you as you keep wiping and reinstalling Windows. Now, this discovery actually marks, if you didn't know, and I've talked about this in the past, the third time that the security community has uncovered UEFI-based malware that is designed to persist in flash memory. The previous two include LoJax, which was found in 2018, and Mosaic Regressor, which was found in 2020. So this new strain, Moonbounce, was designed to retrieve additional malware payloads that could be installed into your computer. But according to Kaspersky, Moonbounce is even more advanced and stealthy because it can use a previously benign core component in the motherboard's firmware to facilitate malware deployment. Kaspersky has uncovered evidence as well that the malicious code is the work of a Chinese state-sponsored group dubbed APT41, or Advanced Persistent Threat 41, which is basically known for espionage. If you didn't know, in 2020, the U.S. Justice Department charged 5 alleged members of that particular group in China for breaching over 100 companies, including software and video game developers, to steal source code, customer account data, and other intellectual property. And that is one of the big problems that we have with China as well as Russia, in that they turn blind eye to essentially the ripping off of intellectual property, copyrighted material, and those kinds of things, and reproduce it. I literally just had a conversation the other day with a friend of mine that basically sold artwork to a company here in the United States, and essentially that artwork was found and is now being reproduced for much cheaper on much cheaper materials from a company based out of China, and there's essentially nothing they can do about it. That literally happened. I literally had that conversation in the last 24 hours. Very not fun, but these are the things that we are dealing with. But when we're also talking about a computer system, or excuse me, an infection for a computer system that can persist beyond operating reinstalls, the big problem that we have is that a lot of smaller businesses outsource their IT to third parties that don't keep up on these kinds of things. They assume they just have a standard infection or ransomware. They wipe the system, they rebuild the network with wiped machines, and the next thing you know, everything's infected again. So these are huge problems that we really need to look at. We also need to really start coming up with excellent cybersecurity solutions. Oftentimes, when we see these things installed and they're bypassing antivirus because the antivirus can't pick it up because it's at a different layer than what the antivirus can understand, we're usually looking at the perimeter of the network to stop this kind of traffic, meaning as it fires up and phones home to whatever command and control it has in the internet, it's going through a firewall that can hopefully see and analyze that traffic and say, oh, that's a problem, and then block it from going out. So in other words, it can't phone home to download, and so the only thing it can do is be contained in the network work, and hopefully it won't activate because nobody, meaning nobody malicious, can communicate with it. But if you don't have those good perimeter defenses, that's a problem. And we're also obviously in the cybersecurity community developing other technologies and tactics to start understanding more intuitively how hardware and software, those two layers, are interacting with each other to make sure that we are stopping these things at the hardware level. I actually did an interview with somebody that's on the forefront of hardware cybersecurity about a year or two ago, I want to say. I think it was during the pandemic, but it was really interesting. His name was Yossi Applebaum. You can find that on my YouTube channel. And finally, I want to talk about one more thing, and that is the renewable energy sector. Obviously, we've seen a huge push globally, especially in the United States, Canada, Europe, Australia, etc., to have renewable energy, things like solar and wind and all those kinds of things to supplement existing and traditional types of power plants like coal and nuclear. But here's what's going on, because a large-scale cyber espionage campaign is targeting basically renewable energy, and it's primarily targeting renewable energy and essentially those organizations, and this has been active since at least 2019, targeting 15 of these major entities worldwide. Now, this campaign was discovered by security researcher William Thomas. Basically, he is a curated intelligence trust group member who employed open source intelligence known as OSINT techniques like DNS scans, public sandbox submissions, and more to essentially find this out, figure this out, and track this down. Now, Thomas's analysis revealed that an attacker uses a custom mailbox toolkit, an unsophisticated phishing package deployed on the basically threat actor's infrastructure, as well as on legitimate websites, to essentially compromise hosts and turn them into phishing pages. These phishing campaigns have a goal here, and that is to steal the login credentials of those working for renewable energy firms, environmental protection organizations, and industrial technology in general. Meaning, let's say you have a login portal to your renewable energy company as an employee, they are hijacking it, essentially skimming those credentials off of you, and then leveraging your credentials as you think you're legitimately logging in. They are using those to log in as you, and there you go. Now, examples of organizations targeted by the phishing attacks include Schneider Electric. They are huge. They have an entire division used by IT and cybersecurity all the time known as APC. That's where everybody gets their battery backups, or a lot of them anyway. Honeywell, major corporation. Huawei, High Silicon, Telecom Romania, the University of Wisconsin, Cal State University, Utah State University, the Kardzali Hydroelectric Power Station in Bulgaria, CEZ Electro in Bulgaria, the California Air Resources Board, Morris County Municipal Utilities Authority, Taiwan Forestry Research Institute Carbon Disclosure Program, and Sorima, which is an Italian recycling firm. Now, Thomas couldn't attribute the campaign to any specific actor, but the indicators of compromise and evidence point to two clusters of activity, one from APT-28 or Advanced Persistent 28, aka Fancy Bear, which is out of Russia if you were not familiar, and the other one is from a group known as Kony, which are considered to be out of North Korea. Google's threat analysis group also recently found phishing activity of a similar vein attributed to APT-28, aka Fancy Bear, out of Russia, for basically using the same type of domain and leveraging very similar attacks. So it looks like there's a very high probability, or at least above average probability, that the Russians are at it again, and the North Koreans look like they've got a hand in this too. So we're going to see where this goes. Those were your breaches of the week. It was another crazy week, although slightly less long, if you will, than last week, which is never a bad thing. The less breaches we have, the better. But here we are. And so those were your breaches of the week. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP. And please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe, stay online, and please stay private. Thanks, everyone.